So now we come to the conversation. The Innovation Summit is meant to be the climax of the Citi Business Festival as far as the ideational content is concerned. And this program is meant to envision the kind of business environment we see Ghana having in the next 20 years. The future of Ghana business is a platform that would bring the very best in the field of thinking, people who have excelled in their areas, to elicit their views on how they see the country shaping up and how competitive the country will be in the continent and in the world at large. We had invited 5 of the best. One of them called in sick at the last minute, but we still have 4 very influential thinkers to help us think through the topic. I'm going to call them not in any particular order, say a few things about them, and they'll come and take their seat to my right. Kofi Dadzie is the co-founder and chief executive officer of Rancard Solutions. Kofi has led Rancard in its evolution from ERP custom software development in Ghana to a multinational mobile telecom software and mobile advertising technology business with a client base including Google, BBC, VOA, MTV, ESPN, and connectivity to global carriers Vodafone, MTN, Tigo, Zain, Airtel, Orange, Globacom, and a whole host of others in more than 25 countries across the continent, the Middle East, and Asia. Prior to founding Rancard, Kofi was a senior analyst in the BIOS technology team at Dell in the US, where he filed a patent. A fellow of the Aspen Global Leadership Network and Africa Leadership Initiative, he is also served on Ashesi's Corporate Advisory Council and currently on the governing council of Genius Hive, a music school and conservatory. He has a computer engineering degree from Vanderbilt University, Tennessee, USA. Ladies and gentlemen, Kofi Dadzie, our first panelist. Please put your hands together for him. Our other panelist is, okay, let me let Kofi sit first. Kofi, just choose any seat and sit. Patrick Awuah Jr., founder and president of Ashesi University College, a private not-for-profit institution that has quickly gained a reputation for innovation and quality education in Ghana. Ashesi aims to contribute to a renaissance in Africa by educating a new generation of ethical entrepreneurial leaders with the critical thinking skills and ethical courage it will take to transform the continent. Graduates from Ashesi are working for progress across Africa, and the university has become a recognized voice in higher education in Ghana. In 2012, Ashesi University was ranked as one of the top 10 most respectable companies in Ghana and was the first educational institution to win the award. In the same survey, Patrick was named the 4th most respected CEO in Ghana. Before founding Ashesi, Patrick worked as a program manager for Microsoft, where, among other things, he spearheaded the development of dial-up internet working technologies and gained a reputation for bringing difficult projects to completion. He has a bachelor degree in engineering and economics from Swarthmore College and an MBA from UC Berkeley Haas School of Business and an honorary doctorate from Swarthmore College and Babson College. He's won many prestigious international awards, including the MacArthur Fellowship, the McNulty Prize, and he holds a membership of the Order of the Volta, one of Ghana's highest awards. If I were to continue with giving his credentials, we will not go home today. So, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Patrick G. Awuah Jr. Patrick, it's great to have you. Third panelist, Bright Simmons is the president of mpedigree Network, where he pioneered a system that allows consumers to instantly check whether products they buy, especially health-related products, are counterfeit or not by sending a free text message. He is Honorary Director of Development Research at IMANI. He is a member of the World Economic Forum's Global Agendas Council on Data and Development, Young Global Leaders and Technology Pioneers Committees. He is a TED and Ashoka Fellow and a Brain Trust member of the Evian Group at IMD. He is a recipient of numerous awards ranging from an Archbishop Desmond Tutu Award, a Marie Curie and Commonwealth Vision Grant, to a PPARC scholarship in gamma ray astrology. Even if you don't know what that means, you can put your hands together. Bright is consulted on innovation strategy by international organizations such as the World Bank, UNECA, USAID, and the Commonwealth, and is a member of the United Nations Task Force on Innovation Models in Healthcare and the Lancet Commission on Sub-Saharan Africa. He is a global fellow of the Salzburg Global Seminar, where he also served on the 2011 Faculty for Healthcare. He's appeared on primetime BBC shows, cited by The Economist magazine, and been profiled by MIT's Tech Reviews as one of the world's most impressive visionaries under age 35. He was placed on a list by Fortune magazine of the world's 50 greatest leaders, beating such international leaders as the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He was also ranked among Africa's 10 most innovative individuals by New York-based QZ magazine. Bright is furthermore a member of the advisory board of IC Publications, one of the world's leading publishers focused on Africa and Africa's diaspora, and he has a lot of titles. But what I like most is that he was my junior in secondary school. Can you imagine that? Ladies and gentlemen, Bright Simmons. They say no matter how tall an okra tree grows, the owner can still bend it and harvest it. But that's an African proverb. Bright Simmons. Fourth panelist and final panelist is Anan Ankomah, managing partner and head of litigation and dispute resolution practice group. He leads a strongly dedicated team of lawyers who are committed to excellence, diligence, and hard work. He has over 2 decades experience in legal practice. Aside his work as a lawyer, Ace manages the affairs of the firm assiduously, ensuring that every department is functioning for the continuous development of the firm and society. His skills as manager and administrator have jointly contributed towards the high rankings the firm has attained in both local and international circles. Ace is a member of the Ghana Bar Association. He served on the International Court of Arbitration of International Chamber of Commerce and as a regional vice chair for Europe, Middle East, and East and Africa of the Lex Mundi Managing Partners Committee. He's also worked as the general manager of the Data Center Limited, a subsidiary of the firm. In addition, Ace has served on various boards and advisory committees nationwide. He graduated from the University of Ghana in 1990, LLB, after which he enrolled in the Ghana School of Law. Your achievements are so much, my voice is choking. Leaving with a qualification certificate in 92. Pursued his master's LLM, International Taxation, Queen's University, Canada. From the late 80s to the millennium, Ace has taken up varied teaching and legal focused assignments while working with the University of Ghana, Legon, and Queen's University, Canada, where he worked as a research assistant and lecturer. Ace has therefore become an acknowledged leader in litigation and dispute resolution, possessing wide experience in the practice and teaching of company law, tax law, civil litigation, and procedure. Apart from all this, he is a virtuoso musician who formed a family choir recently. Ladies and gentlemen, Ace Ankomah. Once again, apologies because our fifth panelist, Estelle Akofio-Sowa, had a situation that made it impossible for her to be here. And so we apologize on her behalf. She's assured us she's with us in spirit. I will now take my seat by my very strong panel and we'll start the conversation. What we'll do first is to give each of you a few minutes to help us appreciate where you are coming from. Sounds like a very big topic. Ghana in the next 20 years, the future of Ghana business. Maybe I'll start from my extreme right, Kofi Dadzie. What are your initial thoughts on this subject that we've invited you to discuss? Yes.
Good evening to everybody. I positioned myself here hoping that he'd start from the other end. I really came to listen, but as it is. Well, I'm fortunate that I actually worship at a church where the head pastor tells us to plan for 20 years. So I have a little background in this, but I haven't done my homework that he gave. So let's see how it goes. The thing about trying to look far forward into the future is that most of us tend to get it wrong. We do it the other way around. And I'll just try and focus on some guidelines on how we think about it. So the first thing is you want to project a vision of what you would like that future to look like, and then understand that it's predicated on actions you take now. It's not about what you'll be doing then. It's actually instead about what you'll be doing now, which will render a future that is desirable, but actually is not, is probably, especially when you're thinking of 20 years and how fast the world moves, it's represented in stuff that is not very clear now. Now, I learned from a gentleman who is a future technologist who said, it's important to start with the certainties, take out the uncertainties, right? So think of it this way. There are hard trends and there are soft trends. The hard trends represent statements of fact about the future. These are things that you know will happen in the future because they are based on trends now that are going to emanate in what you can clearly see will be in the future. And so you identify these hard trends, and then you figure out how to take advantage of them. Now, how do you take advantage of them? You try and derive a number of soft trends. They are soft because they are malleable. So you can make interventions or changes to how they come out. You can insert yourself into a soft trend because it's not certain. It's what you can actually make happen, but they are linked to the hard trends. So I'm going to suggest a couple of hard trends and then a number of short trends, which, especially from my perspective of the world, which is a limited engineering perspective, what I can see. So 2 hard trends. One is that connectedness is increasing. People are increasingly connected. Devices are increasingly becoming interconnected, which is generally called IoT, the Internet of Things. And then also devices are interconnected with people. So people, devices, highly connected, interconnected, right? So try and have a picture of this as increasingly we can reach each other, and we are also connected via devices and machines that are themselves interconnected. And this connectedness is enhanced and enabled by, high-speed data networks that are getting faster and increasingly ubiquitous. Trend 2. This is a very African trend, very specific. So global population growth, projections are that almost 50% of actual population growth over the next 20 to 30 years will occur from Africa, across the African continent. And the current situation, which determines what the future is in a certainty, is that 6 out of 10 Africans are under the age of 24. That suggests that if you raise the bar to about the age of 34, it's probably 7 out of 10 Africans, right? So now if you invert that into the future, what it suggests is that 20, 30 years from now, the people who would represent us on this stage would be greater than us in a ratio of 7:3. So the hard trend is that you will have that widening of the potential workforce exploding at that point. That's known. Now, here's the fun part, the soft trends. That is, what can businesses become in our part of the world, in Ghana specifically, in the future because of these 2 hard trends. Hard trend 1, high connectedness, people, devices, interconnected. Hard trend 2, population explosion relative to the future based on the fact that 6 out of 10 people are under the age of 24. So, soft trend 1, Think of a graph, right? Which is represented by connections. And so people are connected, devices are interconnected, and people are interconnected with devices. This is a new type of network. This network is global. This network is accessible. Question is, who is going to access it and how do you access it? So the first soft trend is this network is going to be there. Literally, everybody on the globe is going to be interconnected somehow. People to people to people to people, people to devices, devices to devices to people. And if you can build the infrastructure to access this global network of people and devices, then you can render services globally, remotely from where you are. Because it's connected, it's available. What you need is the infrastructure to reach it. And it's not just wired bandwidth. It's software APIs that you control that can plug into this global connected platform and render services into it, right? So what Ghanaian businesses need to be building, and it connects to the second soft trend, I'll explain that in a bit, is A, the infrastructure to connect into this global highly connected network to render services globally, and then the skills to be able to work with those future software interfaces, by the way, which include virtual reality interfaces, which means you can literally remotely be present in a room and interact with somebody and render service to them. Think of medical diagnosis, think of teaching. Those are two key areas: education, health. Now let's connect to soft trend 2. The second soft trend is basically related to the infrastructure. Now, if we can actually, it's related to the population growth. Now, it's not automatic that when 6 to 7 out of 10 Africans who are today under the age of 24 are now the cream of the working population age, it's not automatic that they will be well educated enough. They are not enough Ashesi universities yet. It's not automatic that they'll be well educated enough to be this highly skilled workforce that can plug into the global interconnected network and render services globally. So the soft trend is how businesses will position to develop these skills, right? And developing these skills now, we're talking about today's population under 24. So you're talking about from primary school intervening, secondary schools, and ultimately tertiary institutions to build the infrastructure, to develop this workforce that will be huge. It's referred to in developmental terms as the demographic dividend windfall. So Africa will have this windfall of a large potential working force. The key is that their skills would need to be developed, appropriate to people who can actually plug into this global network of connected people and devices and render high value services, right? So for those of you who've watched Minority Report, there's Tom Cruise using his hands, right, to control computer systems that literally look like they're in the air, and he's rendering things remotely to places where he's not. And there are lots of scenarios like this, right? And if you watch some of these movies 2 years, 5 years ago, think of holographic travel and holograms. If you watch Star Trek, how a person can be literally digitized and transported somewhere else. These things are there today in labs, but 20 years from now, they will be the reality. The question is, can we develop this huge demographic dividend windfall of a potential workforce to be the people who will be the experts at controlling these services and these technologies to tap into this global network? Because once the global network is available, and it's increasingly so, it's a question of A, who can access it, and B, who can actually render these high-value services that the interfaces will make available. So those are the soft trends which Ghanaian businesses want to prepare for. The second is developing the skills and the technology interfaces to tap into the first, which is the global interconnected network.
Thank you, Kofi. So, two soft trends, two hard trends. The engineer in you always compartmentalizing. Patrick, so how are you going to come at this? Where do you see future of Ghana business in the next 2 decades?
So, when I saw the title, Ghana 20 years from now, my first reaction was, I have no clue. It's really hard to know what Ghana will look like 20 years from now. But here's some things that I do based on current trends, like what Kofi was saying. If Ghana's population growth stays the way it is today, then 20 years from now, the population of Ghana will be approximately 40 million people. We're going to grow by 150%. And the same in Africa. So if trends stay where they are, 20 years from now, Africa will be 1.7 billion people. We know that there's a changing climate worldwide, and this is going to have ramifications for everyone on the planet, and certainly for Africa. We know that technology is evolving rapidly. I think that what is happening with technology today is incredibly profound. We are going beyond the age of information, and we're entering an age of intelligent machines. This is going to have some very serious consequences, and it's going to open some very serious opportunities for us. In the past, the way, regions of the world have advanced, industrial revolution happens in the global north. You have relatively inexpensive labor there. They produce in factories. Labor gets expensive. It's inexpensive in Asia, and the jobs move to Asia. Asia advances, and we all used to think that, over time, as wages rise in Asia, that those jobs would then move to Africa to lower cost labor here on the continent. With the rise of intelligent machines, that is no longer guaranteed. The jobs might move to be done by robots that are very capable. And this technology is here today. So, and I'll give you an example. A month ago, my assistant was trying to set up a meeting a couple of months ago with the previous chairman of my board. And so he has this email conversation with my board chair's assistant, and they finally agree on a time for this phone call to happen, and the phone call happens. And then afterwards, my assistant comes to me and says, Patrick, I just found out that the assistant that I arranged this meeting with was a robot. This was a piece of artificial intelligence scheduling a meeting on behalf of somebody else. And I read that email thread. It was impeccable English. It was grammatically correct. There were no spelling errors. It was polite. And it was a machine. And today, Google has an AI that is reading romance novels. They have an AI that is composing music. The world that we're entering, that is already here today, is going to be profoundly different than the world that I grew up in. And 20 years from now, the world that today's young people are going to be living in is going to be very different. And so, for me, with the work that I do, I see our job as educating people for a future that we cannot fully predict. And the way to do that is to educate people to be analytical, to be creative, to be flexible, and to be open to new ideas and new things. And so this is going to be very important for the future of Ghanaian business in the future, that we must educate a future workforce and a future leadership core that can navigate change, because the change is coming. It's going to be faster and more profound than anything we've seen to date.
Thank you, Patrick. That was quite scary listening to you there, but so let me come to Bright, give you the chance to open up, generic opening, before I get any questions through.
So I'll follow the lead of the first two speakers, my very eminent friends, Kofi and Patrick. But I'll start by saying that the way I see it, I take my cue from William Gibson. Just mark that up. I take my cue from William Gibson, who said that the future is already here, just unevenly distributed. He said the future is already here, but it's unevenly distributed. And when I think about that, it brings to mind a thought experiment. If I was to go back to 1996 and say, how will Ghana be like in 20 years, which is today, what will be dramatically different? Well, we will still be talking about energy crisis, because 1996 we had the first indication that we're going to have a major energy crisis, and in 97, 98, the energy system nearly collapsed. We will certainly be talking about academic research fees at the university, because I remember that very well. I was in that demonstration. So there are aspects of our society that is not evolving very fast. And there are aspects of our society that can be passed by the change. There are, however, like Patrick and Kofi has already said, a number of trends that you can extrapolate that are already evident in the way that our society is structured. One of those that I see very strongly is the fact that every company will become a technology company, by which I mean that it will emphasize efficiency and productivity above almost everything else. Now, one of the fundamental challenges that we have in corporate Ghana, as I have seen it, and for many years as an outsider looking in, has been the unfortunately low stature of technologists. So once we did a survey of the Ghana Club 100, which has become, something like an S&P 500 for us, top blue chip companies in Ghana, and not a single one of them at board level had anybody with an IT background. That was quite phenomenal to learn. We also did some surveys in the banking sector and realized that for the vast majority of bankers in Ghana today, information security is almost non-existent as a formal discipline within the bank. So you have increasing incidents where people will, typically when tenant people or contractors will hack into the system or will carry a couple of, dubious activities using the company's banking system. And most of the people at the strategy table in the boardroom, thinking strategically, have absolutely no insight into the technological underpinning of their business model. So they don't even understand how the technologies that actually power their banking system works, whether it's FlexCube or whatever it is that nowadays they are using. And increasingly, you don't have a CIO, not increasingly, what you used to observe was that you had no CIO function at the top table. And this will be the case if you go to Kojo board, if you go to VRA, go elsewhere, that there's understanding is that the IT person should be in the basement. There's the boys in t-shirts. And when you have issues, you call them up the boardroom and then you walk back down. But the idea of IT as a strategic function of the business is not there. And my view is that going forward, that will dramatically change, but it will change under pressure. The second thing that I also observe, and making the point that we are extrapolating, is deformalization is going to intensify. Unless we have dramatic changes in our economy, most people are going to stop running formal businesses. By which I mean that the benefits of being a limited liability company, having a board, subjecting yourself to all that governance is going to be increasingly unattractive. So you're going to have a lot more freelancers. Your employees are going to be doing 3 jobs. You're going to struggle very hard to keep an employee focused and loyal to your brand. You're going to see instances where informal network of businesses rise to become the dominant suppliers to businesses. So some of these people will also become your competitors. And some industries are already more or less going extinct in Ghana. You will struggle to find a blue chip design company, a company that does branding, of material branding, for instance, like leaflets and outdoor design and the rest. You will struggle to find a formal business of more than 50 people running a business like that. Because increasingly freelancers who can fly over to China, bring some stuff, are competing with them. And they are delivering services to the top 10, top 100 companies in Ghana, and these companies are comfortable dealing with them. So increasingly, you're going to have a situation where informal networks, sole proprietorships, one-man businesses, rather than decline, will increase in number. Part of that is fueled by the third trend, which I wanted to mention quickly. I know my time is over, which is the talent wars, which we have not experienced. By now, people, there was a time 5 years ago where everybody thought we were on that path. The banks were poaching staff from other banks. The telcos were, doubling the salaries that other employees and other telcos were earning. And we thought we were finally on the path of talent war. That did not happen because of the deformalization trend, but partly also because the economy obviously tanked. But the key point you have to realize is that in 1970, there were 9,300 secondary students. That's the number of students who actually had a secondary education. Today, the total enrollment in universities is almost 400,000. So expect next year a graduate population for that year alone of 100,000 fresh graduates. The number of people applying for master's and doctoral programs are increasing by a combined 70% per annum over the last five years. The number of people applying for doctoral and master's programs. Actually, for postgraduate diplomas, more females are applying for science-based programs than male students. There are crazy trends in higher education. In 5 to 10 years, everybody will have a degree, possibly. Now, one of the things that is going to emerge is that the sheer size of the talent pool and the lack of a proper HR function in businesses will mean we can't hire anymore properly, or easily at least. So perhaps outsourcing will become more effective. But one of the challenges that I perceive is increasing people will just simply rely on informal providers of services than try and do things in-house. So these are 3 trends that I see, and if in the course of the conversation if there's interest, I will elaborate.
Thank you very much. Is Ankomah.
So at this point, I wonder what a lawyer is doing up here. Because that's all I know. But I'll start with a quotation from a book. The title of the book is The End of Lawyers, ? Published 6 years ago by Richard Susskind. And he said in that book that research suggests that traditional lawyers, as the future comes, will in large part be, quote, replaced by advanced systems or by less costly workers supported by technology or standard processes, or by lay people armed with online self-help tools, unquote. I am not likely to have a job in 20 years' time, is what Richard Susskind is saying. But what I want to say is that this future, as John Legend says, I love music, this future began yesterday, and we're already late. Now, who is a lawyer? It's simply somebody whose name has been entered into a role as a lawyer and can practice law without going to jail for practicing law. Which means that if you try to practice law and your name is not in that role, almost like the road to heaven, you can actually go to jail. Now, the legal profession does what? Basically 3 things. Resolve disputes, advise on transactions, counsel clients on rights and duties. Disputes, we all meet in a courtroom where with formal processes, obtuse traditions, arcane language, ugly dark dressing, wearing a robe, and a wig. 21st century Africans wearing a blonde wig. Now, but at the corner of all of what you call the legal profession is the cost, because you are going to have to pay. And we have about 20 different kind of payment structures. There's retainer, hourly billing, fixed billing, which may be milestone formula or task-based billing. There's cap fees, contingency fees, success fees, which could be no win, no fee, or even a premium-based fee. There are discounted charges, blended charges, volume discounts, value billing, and guess what? Secondments. That you can charge fees by sending a lawyer from your firm to sit in your client's firm to work for a salary. But cost has become a critical change factor and a driver. We produce all of those voluminous documents, which in 1853, Charles Dickens described as mountains of costly nonsense. Now, as legal expenses have become high, clients are beginning to drive technology and move towards technology. So technology is going to form, and it is a key and central part of the transformation of the legal profession. Now, the way lawyers work has become systemized. We are now compelled to rely heavily on the back office, emails, accounting, admin, word processing, and also well-established legal research tools, Westlaw, LexisNexis, Ghana's own data center, Ghana Law Database. Now, when I was in school, there was nothing like that. In fact, I find out that the schools still don't have that in Ghana. Now, my son asked me, Daddy, how did you research without LexisNexis? In those days, you go to the library, you grab the law reports, sit down, and read them. That future began yesterday, when law students do not handle law books anymore. Who cares for the law report? It is on your PC. But in Ghana, we are still reading them. Now, in 5 quick areas where the law profession is going to be seriously hit. One is online legal help. And that is what we have in Ghana, in data center, where all the laws of Ghana are on a database. It could be on your iPad, your mobile phone, your laptop, your PC. And if I'm doing research, Bernard, and I have to do a research into media law, I don't have to go and grab the book and find out which law mentions media law. And let me show you the trick. When you call me at 5 a.m., that you are going to interview me, I normally ask you, what time? Because I need time to pretend I know. So Bernard says 7:20. I am in the office by 6:30. I sit behind my computer, open Solon, which is the Ghana Law Database, which has all of Ghana's laws and decided cases. He says he wants to talk to me about media law. I type quotation mark, media, space, law, close, enter. Every mention of media law in Ghana law in decided cases comes up on my screen. So I'm waiting at 7:20, checking. Oh, this is what he wants. This is what he wants. By the time Bernard calls me, I sound like I'm a media law expert. It is 5 minutes. That's where the future is. Now, even this is not serious enough, because now you have commercially available online legal services. If you go to LegalZoom, you get legal advice without ever meeting a lawyer. I have done cases where I've never met a client. The Argentina ship case, I never met a client. No, I don't know how Paul Singer looks like. I don't know where the office of NML Capital is. They instructed me through a law firm. It was email correspondence. They instructed, do this. Sometimes they'll send a lawyer to come to Accra to sit in court as I argued. We finished the case. I still haven't met the man before. I don't have to meet him. The future began yesterday. Now, there's Rocket Lawyer, which they call Law Made Simple, which claims that they have generated 3 million legal documents. Now, there are sophisticated diagnostic expert systems that tackle multi-jurisdictional legal questions, and you don't have to meet a lawyer. Anan on Ovary, which is one of the world's biggest law firms, which has 3,000 lawyers. Now, more than 3,000 lawyers. Now, let's put this in the proper perspective. Ghana has a total legal population of just about 3,000 lawyers. The whole Ghana. Anan and Ovary has more than 3,000 lawyers. In fact, there are law firms in this world which can hire all of Ghana's lawyers and go to Nigeria and hire 2,000 more. Now, they have all set up, and now they are offering online services. Production of legal documents. I just told you, it's an offense to produce it in Ghana without being a lawyer. If you go to docracy.com, It's an open collection of legal contracts. And it teaches you how to negotiate and sign your documents online. Shake at shakelaw.com is an app that helps you create legal contracts on your handheld device. Do you really need a lawyer anymore? The future started yesterday. Litigation. There are artificial intelligence systems that are ranked to do better thinking than us litigators. If you go to one, there's a specific one I must mention, lexmachina.com. Lex Machina has gathered all 30 or 50,000 US cases on intellectual property. You don't have to see a lawyer. You type your problem. Lex Machina, the machine goes through the system and predicts how your case is going to go and prints out full legal advice for you. Based on US law.
Wow.
The whole big data technology, artificial intelligence, it is there today. The court, there's a fundamental challenge to the court system. If I live in Tamale and Bright is in Accra, and we disagree over a car he sold to me, we have to decide where he sold the car. Go to the court there, file, appear before a judge. That is ending. There's what is now called online dispute resolution, ODR, where we agree on an expert to check our matter and tell us who is right and who is wrong. In 1 year, ODR and e-adjudication sorts out 60 million disagreements every year on disagreements between eBay merchants and purchasers. Wow. The whole US legal system, the cases filed every year is 20 million. So ODR is resolving 3 times the number of cases filed in the US court system. Let me ask you, is the court a place or a service? Must you really appear before a judge before your dispute is resolved? Or you want your dispute resolved? Look, Modria.com has resolved over 400 million cases for companies like PayPal and eBay. So the future started yesterday. We are already late. How will the legal profession catch up? Let me end with the biggest threat to the Ghanaian legal profession. Our biggest threat is not competition among ourselves. It is the big international law firms in London, South Africa, and Dubai. Because Ghana law is available for everybody to read, just like American law is available for me to read. The thing is English. The South African lawyer, when he reads the Ghana law, knows what your law says. Why should he pay you? So this is what is happening. They get the big contracts. They write the opinions and send it to Ghanaian lawyers to sign for $5,000. They might have charged $500,000 for the work. The big US law firms, UK law firms are doing it. When they saw business coming to Ghana from Asia, they moved to Dubai, set up offices there, and have cornered the Asian business as well. And we are sitting here fighting over drips and drops. We have to be awake to the fact that these exist. And if we do not wake up, we will get where Richard Susskind said, that we will be replaced by advanced systems or by less costly workers supported by technology or standard processes, or by lay people armed with online self-help tools. Even choice of lawyers is based on computer. Word of mouth recommendation is almost dying. They go to online reputation systems where clients would have typed something about you. When I asked one, how did you come to me? He said, we analyzed over 100 Ghanaian lawyers. We went online, we read about them, and then we focused on who we're going to go to. And then they said to me, we are afraid that we would have competition, and this is the ship matter. We are giving you a list of top 10 law firms in Accra. Go and hire all of them so they don't take competition, they don't take instructions from our competition. So 10 top law firms were bought so that they don't compete on the matter. They don't accept instructions from any competition. So by the time the competition came to Accra, all the top 10 law firms were in our pockets. Wow. Online research. The future started yesterday.
Wow.
We are already late.
Round of applause for my panel. This is the Innovation Summit. We're discussing the future of Ghana business here at Kempinski Hotel. This program is live on 97.3 Citi FM. It's live on citifmonline.com. We're streaming on Citi Business News and on Facebook as well. I'm getting 2 things. Technology is going to be disruptive. But the question I'll have for the panelists, should we look at this technology with hope and expectation or with fear and trepidation? Are we going to have a net gain in jobs or a net loss in jobs? Are we going to have the digital dividend or a
And if you program them right and if you get the algorithms right, you're going to get a consistent result that everyone can trust. Having said that, machines can also go haywire. Machines, especially the ones that are designed to learn from humans, can learn the wrong behaviors that humans exhibit, for example. Another example, think about, this hack that happened at Sony, an email hack. If Sony had their email system in the cloud, say at Google or Microsoft or Amazon, they would have been protected. They would have been more protected than they were trying to run the system themselves. So in the same way that, for example, today, we don't keep our money in holes under our beds, we take our money to a bank, that in the future, we won't keep our information on our own servers. We will keep our information in online banks that we currently call clouds. And that sort of democratizes access to a certain kind of capability. You can be sitting in Accra, you can be sitting in Wa, and have your data stored in the same sophisticated place that Sony stores its information. ACE can have access to the same sophisticated technologies that a firm with 2,000 employees has access to. And that gives him a certain kind of leverage. The challenge for us is that we need to be determined to plug in. And when I say we, I'm talking about the royal we, right? The government, you, me, all of corporate Ghana, civil society organizations. We all need to collectively understand that the world is not standing still and is not waiting for us. And we need to execute with a sense of urgency. I don't currently think Ghana has that kind of urgency, that sense of urgency, or that awareness about how quickly things are moving. But I am optimistic that if we get that urgency, we can. This is an enabler for us to catch up very quickly with the rest of the world.
So you are optimistic. Ace had a quite pessimistic, foreboding tone. So I'll make him the last. Kofi, you gave us the hard and soft, and you spoke about demography as well. If you look at what's happening, are you concerned that Ghana will be left behind if we move the pace we're going, or we'll just be fine?
It's a tough one to figure out because Ghana in particular operates in about 2 or 3 shades. And I enjoyed maybe a couple years ago, listening to Ace describing his lifestyle. He has everything, his own water, his own security, his own everything to take care of himself, and the 4x4, a nice one, by the way, so that the potholes are manageable. You remember that, right? Well, so we have a lot of innovators and people in the private sector, corporate Ghana in general, who, despite the lack of infrastructure, despite the we don't lack policies and laws to make things work well, but we lack the soft infrastructure to use those policies to enable things, right? So despite all those things, people who can innovate and create scenarios that sometimes right here in Ghana, you can operate almost as though you're in an advanced country. So the question is this: are we going to have improvement from that position, or are we going to be stagnant or decline? From that perspective, I'm an optimist. And I think if we start with our democratic experiment compared to the rest of Africa, we're sort of ahead. We're in the lead. If we look at our football, except what happened in Brazil a couple years ago, we're in the lead. If we look at education, we have lots of other Africans who come all the way to Ghana for education. If we look at just the nature of our living and even housing, Accra is now like a suburb of Lagos. Rich Lagosians come to Accra for the weekend to relax. So we have lots of things going for us that are not necessarily there because everything is working right, but because there is this spirit of what we can do despite what we don't have. Now, let's dial that straight into the future and technology, because what we need is to be able to aggregate that into a future view. And that's the real challenge. A future view is to take some of what Ace was talking about and to pretend that it's much closer to you than you feel it is, and that it's a real threat. It's an existential threat, and that you have to deal with it. Now, for most of us, once we accept that a threat is real and present, then we find what it takes to respond. We rise up to it, right? So if we can paint a clearer picture of what the future looks like and how we need to dial into it, I don't think we lack the ability, the skills, the drive, the spirit, the passion, or the knowledge to dial into it. But it starts with a future view, painting a clear picture. But I want to add a warning. Now, many of you here will remember Kodak, Polaroid, Motorola. Now, everybody here has a smartphone, with most of us with high-speed data, with a lot of storage. Most of us have several gigabytes of storage on this phone, and a high-resolution camera for still and video, right? So think again, Kodak, Polaroid, what happened to them? They didn't dial into the right future view of what the hard trends of data bandwidth, cheap storage, and access were going to afford. So though they were dominant in those spaces, right, without looking ahead, they lost those to Apple that came in with the iPod and the iPhone and iTunes and the iPad. Ghana has certain advantages today in Africa, right? Education, we stand out. Health, we may be beginning to stand out, at least in terms of doctors and nurses from Ghana who are trained here, who can perform anywhere, and some of the great people here. Again, I like picking on these two sectors. But like Ace pointed out, if we don't look at how technology is going to render the delivery of these services and build the infrastructure and the skills so that we are at the forefront of how these services will be rendered in the future, digital distance learning, with the right bandwidth, with the right technology, think artificial intelligence, virtual reality, you won't just be sitting in your bedroom looking at a screen. You will be in that room in that classroom 5,000 miles away. You wouldn't have bought a ticket. You wouldn't have flown there. You wouldn't have needed a visa.
Okay.
But you'll be there. And you'll be able to participate not just in the listening and watching, but in the experiments. If we're going to really be the future of education and of health as a global service provider, then we need to start building into the technology.
I'm seeing optimism from that side of the room. You have a quick comment to make, Patrick? Because I wanted to bring the two gentlemen who made me afraid.
Right. So I just have one very quick thing. There's one thing that I'm very uneasy about. I don't know what becomes of people who are not well educated. I have a really hard time imagining what the world will look like for those people who go to school and they don't get educated to be literate, or they don't get educated to be analytical, critical thinkers. They don't get educated to be able to plug in to this future that we're describing. And you had a question about, is it digital opportunity or digital divide? Is digital dividend or divide? It will be a divide for those who are not educated well enough. And that is the one area where I have quite a bit of trepidation.
Okay. So you've qualified your submission. Bright, I want to just jump into you straight.
Yeah. So since everybody has been so polite on the panel, I think it's my duty to be the rude guy and quote a philosopher who said, it's only fools who learn from their own mistakes. So if we look at what has happened in other countries, there are two major points that come up. So I'm very pessimistic in a certain sense. One is that if you look at the way the high-tech sector in the US has operated for the last 2.5 decades, there's been increasing evidence that the economic inequalities that we are seeing in American society is largely a situation that has been fueled by high technology, by which it meant that a lot of the ability of investors to capture huge amounts of value has come about because of greater efficiencies and greater productivity. So labor has lost out. And so for somebody like myself who's a strong private sector person, the evidence is now overwhelming that when you have these very powerful technologies, invariably those with capital and the ability to invest in these systems tend to capture more of the value of the economic output in the country. So one of the things that is going to happen definitely is growing economic inequality. So those of us in this room who have the ability to subcontract work to Croatian programmers, who have the ability to go online and interact with legal firms in the UK and get work from them, are obviously going to make much more money. So economic inequality is very important, which brings us to my mind, the most fundamental of the problems that we've ignored so far in this discussion. Obviously, due to no fault of ours, because we've had such a short time to discuss this issue. The fact of the matter is that innovation by itself, by definition, it's a leadership function. By which I mean, if everybody was doing the same thing, or if everybody had the same role and acted the same way, then how can you have innovation? So by its very nature, innovation is something that a small minority in every society do. It's like, that is the standard way of looking at it. So you can't have everybody be innovative. You're going to have a small subset of it. So leadership becomes fundamental, particularly political and strategic leadership at the nation state level. Here is where I have problems. So you have a situation where if you live in a country, and in that country that you live in, your government's national security communication system was not only conceived and designed in China, it was actually built by Chinese engineers who maintain it. The Polycom in the president's office to critical ministries like defense and finance was designed, conceived, conceptualized by Chinese engineers, installed, and when the president was when the technology was being demonstrated to the president, they had to show him where to click. No, that's the reality. So they will tell you that the national security network doesn't run on public communication lines in Ghana. I said, what does it run on? It runs on Chinese-built and maintained systems. There's no problem having the Chinese come in here with their superior technology and contribute. But it begs, it defies reason that in the same country that you have people like Kofi Dadzie, the government cannot have a high-level advisory council on ICTs that can advise it on national security matters. A few years ago, the government went to China to borrow $3 billion. If you had looked carefully at where that money was going to be spent, about $150 million of that money had been earmarked to be spent on surveillance of our oil assets, our petrochemical assets. So digital infrastructure, radio and radar detection systems, sonar and the rest of it. And we're going to integrate it so that we can mount surveillance on our petrochemical assets more effectively. Will you believe that this was a national security sponsored project? Yet still, every single contractor pre-qualified to support the preparation of the feasibility program was non-Ghanaian. I bet you that will not happen in China. I bet you that will not happen in India. I bet you that will not happen in Croatia. I bet you that will not happen in Estonia. Now, if you have a situation where you have a leadership at strategic levels of the nation state, whether in business or in politics, who are completely unconcerned about the strategic matters that confront us in a competitive world, how can you be optimistic?
Can you hear me? Well, let me, you said I sounded a pessimistic tone. This is how I describe myself. I am an optimo-pessimist. And I'm saying this because when I look at Ghana, Africa, we have an amazing ability to do one thing: exist and live in different centuries at the same time. And so if nothing changes, that is what it's going to be. Those who are clued in will move quickly. Those who are clued out will remain where they are or drag everyone else back. So we're going to have the internal tensions where some want to break out and take advantage of innovation, and there are going to be many who will still be where they are. Smartphone, and you are buying data, and you are bundling. You have no excuse. You are using it to stream, watch movies, when you could be doing research. Now, there are times we are having an internet discussion, maybe Facebook, and someone asks a question, and I don't have the answer. But the person has data. So I Google, get the answer, and provide it, and the clown thinks I'm bright. I'm not. I'm not bright. You are dumb. Because you have the tools that I have. And so the question is, what do you have in your hands? Everybody who has a smartphone has the ability to start innovating and discovering more things. Another question. Look at banking. I don't remember the last time I went to a bank. What am I going to do? I hardly write checks. What's your account number? In 3 seconds, the money's in your account. I have a house manager. I hardly take out money. When I get the list of things to do, then it's transferred into her account. Then she goes to sort it out. Do you realize that there are little things you could do which creates innovation, but you don't know, you want to hold the physical cash and count it out. Say, hey, I don't trust these internet things, so someone may steal my money. They will slap you in your house and steal the money. Right? Now, you know that there are major hotels you can't enter if you don't have a card. All of you with ATM cards have the ability to do internet transactions. But no, you will still drive to the ATM, forget your PIN, slide it, take out cash, and go and pay. Now, that's the funny thing. Movenpick has an ATM machine there. And I see people take cash from the ATM and pay inside Movenpick. When they would they have POS and will take your card. And so, if we don't change, what is going to happen is, like I said, those who want to move forward are going to move very quickly. And there are people here who are up to whatever you see in the US or in Croatia. And there are many who will never wake up to it. It's a mental thing. It starts in the mind. And let me sound controversial in this. If the leader of government intervention in private sector development believes that the modern way of creating money for people, jobs, is to cut grass and hunt for stones, then we are lost. Because there's innovation. on your smartphone.
Brilliant stuff. Listeners and our audience will be turning to you shortly to be involved in this conversation. This is the Innovation Summit. It's coming to you live from Kempinski Hotel here in Accra. My name is Bernard Avle, your moderator. My panel is Anan Ankomah, Kofi Dadzie, Patrick Awuah, and Bright Simmons. This program is sponsored by MTN Business and SIC Insurance. We have an MTN 4G team who say you can visit any of their service centers to swap your SIM for free and enjoy 100% bonus or double your data. I've tried it and it works. I have a final question for the panel before I turn to the audience. So we've heard the good and the bad. What is the most important change Ghanaian businesses must make not to lose out in this future? And I want you to list one, just one, and why. Which is the most important thing Ghanaian businesses should change? Or which one area should they focus on if they are to be competitive globally in the future we're seeing in 2036? That's the question for the panel. I want whoever is ready to start. I know they are all thinking. We'll come to you, the audience, for your views and your questions as well. But which one area should Ghanaian businesses focus on? The most important area, so that they don't get left behind in this digital change we're seeing in the world. It's not a trick question, so anybody can start. Kofi, yes.
Empowerment. And by empowerment, it means doing everything possible to develop the skills and the abilities of the people who are working and giving them the room, the tools, and the permission to innovate and respond to what customers' needs are, not only now, but in the future. That, put differently, means not demanding that all the time your workforce is engaged is spent on making cash today, but that a significant amount of time is spent dialing into the future.
So you're talking about preparing the workforce?
It's about preparing the and the one word would be empowerment.
The workforce you have now or the workforce you are going to have? So is it investing in Ashesi for the workforce that's coming in 20 years, right, or investing in the people you have now? Well,
it's a mix. For instance, in our case at Rancard, we engage lots of interns, and Ashesi University is our primary place. We also engage interns from Legon and from Tech, from the computer engineering departments. When we engage them, they are plugged. First of all, they get a view of the full complexity of what we are building into the future, and they get to work in it. So I said that the key word was empowerment. And so it's to not just develop their skills or invest in people's skills development, but giving them the permission to innovate, giving them the permission to make mistakes and learn, but making sure that not all the time is spent on generating today's cash. That's the key.
Okay, right. Preparing the workforce. Patrick.
So, Bernard, this is a very difficult question. To say just one thing.
The most important.
I think that corporate Ghana needs to be a lot more activist. Okay. And when I say corporate Ghana needs to be more activist, I think there are a couple of areas that needs a more proactive engagement. There needs to be a greater interest in the educational system, not just complaining about problems, but helping to solve the problems. There also needs to be a lot more activism to affect public policy and to affect the way the government thinks about our country and the way the government operates. Because the government, the things that they do, it's like the ground you walk on. And if the ground is shaky, it's really hard to chart a proper path. And so this is, I would say, the one thing is activism, both both for making sure that there's a strong workforce being developed in the country, but also to make sure that government policy is correct. And not just behave as if the government is in charge, but see how does corporate influence and affect the behavior of government officials.
It's an interesting point. Corporate leaders must be more activist. Bright used to be an activist who's now become a corporate type. So it's I wonder how so because he's now an armchair activist and he's more entrepreneurial. Kofi Benton is smiling. It's true. So it's funny you're saying corporate leaders need to be more activist. Here is an activist contorting himself into a corporate leader. So Bright, over to you.
So it's not going to be surprising that I incline more to the worldview that Patrick has shared than the firm level or company level advice that Kofi just gave. I also feel that we've got to the stage where company level activity is just not going to be sufficient. The problems are too systemic to be able to, at the level of a particular company, make radical changes to the way you do business and therefore the way your profitability, your margins, etc. go. So I think the single most important thing that businesses can do is to find a new culture of collaboration. I find the Ghanaian corporate sector much too fragmented. Too fragmented. There is a lot of individualism in Ghana. It's always been the case. But I think we've taken it to the extreme in the business sector, and therefore intelligence is not being well shared. People are making the same mistakes that other people have made 5 years ago. There is very little ability to leverage on top of other people's activities. And if Silicon Valley or any of these other well-established business ecosystems behave the way we did, and the way we are behaving today, they wouldn't be where they are. We need a much more effective, a much more open, and a much more concerted culture of collaboration that enable businesses to do 4 things. 1 is learn from each other's mistakes. 2 is share intelligence. 3 is network around the issue of common problems such as talent, which one company cannot solve alone. And 4, influence the regulations and the standards that are created, which more often than not, tend to stifle corporate development in this country. I think collaboration, to me, particularly a culture of collaboration, is the most important thing.
Thank you. And Ace?
Well, I say change before you have to. That's what Jack Welch says. Change before you have to. We can talk about the government level and everything, but how about you? Now, I am a very dissatisfied person with myself and everything I do. Every day, sitting in my office trying to run the behemoth, I ask myself, is there anything I can do to make things better? For example, my dream is that in the shortest time possible, the library in my office will be unnecessary. Nobody goes there. Already, it is the least used room because they have it on their machines. We had a librarian. We've assigned her to other duties. I may turn the library into some reading space for whatever it is worth. What can you do for yourself? The things you do. Let me give very simple examples. I no longer forget my wife's birthday or anniversary. No. I enter it into this machine and into all the ones that I have. I set a 48-hour reminder, 36-hour reminder, 12-hour reminder. So when she receives the flowers, she says, hey, of late, it is machine. Now, we can do it's in the little things we do, the little building blocks that begin to tell that there are other things you can do. Let me give you a couple of examples. A guy forgot his mother's birthday and at 5 p.m. remembered and phoned the flower shop and said, I need to send flowers to my mother. Said, what's her address? Says, this address. Can you get there in an hour? Said, oh yes. Said, I'm going for dinner. If I reach there and the flowers haven't arrived, I'm in trouble with my mother. They said, no problem. We will deliver. And we will apologize to your mother and say we were late.
Wow.
So he agreed. And they sent it. By the time he got to his mother's house, huge bouquet of flowers. He didn't have to, of course, he gave his credit card. They took it out of his account. The next year, 3 days to his mother's birthday, he gets a phone call. We are the flower company. It's your mother's birthday. Wow. We are reminding you. It's in technology. Little building blocks. Why? Do they love him? They don't love him. They love his money. So they kid. Kwesi Mensah, mother's birthday, 6th March. Reminder, 4th March at 4 p.m. You'll be in the office. There's an airline. If you sit in that airline and you ask for a drink and they don't have it, the next time you sit in that airline, the air hostess, who was not the one you asked for the drink, will come to you and say, Mr. Awuah, do you want a buck's face today? Why? The minute they don't have it, she has a laptop from the pantry they serve. The person in seat number A was Mr. Bernard Avle. Then your details come up because you bought the ticket online, right? He's from Ghana. He asked for a buck's face. So the next time you book a flight, the computer reminds them, Mr. Avle wants buck's face. The minute you sit down, Mr. Avle, do you like buck's face? You fly that airline forever. They don't love you. They want just to love your money. Think about what you could do for your customers. Now, some of the banks in Ghana tried. No, they're sending happy birthday text messages. But then on 1st January, they send happy birthday to everybody on 1st January when they wanted to send Happy New Year. There are things you can use technology to do. Let me say something I say to people who listen to me. Never do what your money or technology can do for you. Think about it. Never do anything your money or technology can do for you. It's in little building blocks so that when we come together, we are innovating in little ways. We are innovating in our businesses. We are innovating in our homes. The man planting sod, and you know what is sod? It's grass for people to cut and put in front of their house in winter in Delaware. Has an irrigation system which he controls from his house with a GPS. He says, today I want a 3-inch soak, and water will come from those metal things and soak it 3 inches. He's planting grass.
Ankomah. Now, we have a very rich audience. We want to take a few comments, and you can introduce yourself. And if it's a question to a member of the panel, be direct. If it's just a general comment, we're happy to take it. Please be reminded you're live on air, you're live on video, Facebook, and on our website as well. I have a mic with Ranstina, so let me know if there are any comments in the house. So, Ranstina, please come forward and introduce yourself. Are there any more comments so we know how many we take? Any more comments? Okay. Yes, on the same table. Good.
My name is William Ofori, and I happen to know quite a few people on the panel. It's interesting we're talking innovation and technology. I think we have technology. We're not using it. I mean, a driver takes a 4-wheel drive, V8, with a folder, drives from one ministry to the other, hands the file to a messenger, he gives it to a secretary, who then sends it to the boss, for the boss to sign, and then it goes back from the secretary to the messenger, to the driver, through Accra traffic to another ministry. This could be signed electronically with a paper trail. And yet, this boss has the latest PC, laptop, iPad, and smartphone. Where are we? Yesterday, right here in this hotel, my organization had a meeting with a medical expert outside the country. We streamed the meeting live to Kempinski and simultaneously to Golden Tulip, Kumasi, and had dozens of doctors interact with these professors abroad, listen to the seminar, asked questions, contributed, and exchanged knowledge. This is technology. Where are we using all this? If I was to ask the audience here that in the past week, how many of you have had a multi-person teleconference, used Skype meeting, or signed documents electronically? Are we using technology presently, as my good friend Ace Ankomah said? I think that it all, like you said, starts from leadership. Because when one of the teleconference companies launched in Ghana, I remember that one of our leaders was the first to test the system. And yet, people fly or drive from Tamale to come and have a 30-minute meeting and go back. Why can't they have a Skype video conference? Yesterday, another professional organization that I belong to had a meeting, and all those who couldn't attend the meeting dialed in via Skype. Technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the same table.
Okay, so my name is Clenam Fiajo. I work with a company called Sika. And I want to just make a few comments related to Ankomah's comments. This happened just last week. Our company raised funding and we're going around opening accounts with different banks. So on our way to work, we get to Lagos Avenue, East Legon. We go into an orange Nigerian bank. I don't want to mention names. Okay, that's what you think. So we walk into this orange Nigerian bank, and then a relationship officer comes to us and says, "Oh, you need an auditor's letter to open this account." So we ran all the way to the auditor at Kaswa. So we listed all the banks that we wanted to open with, went all the way to Kaswa to get all the letters, and then come back to the bank. Now this RM tells us again that, "Oh, the letter you brought didn't have a stamp on it, so it's invalid." So before we left, I told the auditor, that the RM, that if we leave, we are not coming back. He said he didn't say anything. He just took the forms and then left. So we left the bank, went to a blue South African bank. Again, you can assume whichever bank it is. Now this bank, we didn't have a passport picture. And we didn't have the letter as well. The letter was invalid from the previous experience that we had. So this bank was like, "Oh, we don't need the letter. I mean, so far as we have accounts with the bank, or if anybody can refer us, that's not a problem." They took their phones, took us a picture, opened the account, and we were all set up within 5 minutes. Now, in the past 5 years, the mantra was innovate or die. Now, the mantra is disrupt or get disrupted. We go to a lawyer's office, and the way our business works, the funding that we raised, we wanted to do a convertible note. I don't know if Ankomah knows about convertible notes. We wanted to raise a convertible note, which is more like a safe. This lawyer tells us that, he doesn't know what convertible note is, so it's something we have to go to the US for. We went onto Google, downloaded a convertible note, read it, changed everything that we had to change, sent it to the investor, and he signed it, and it works. So I understand Ankomah's point that things are changing and things must change. Now, Uber is about to disrupt our transportation sector. Taxi drivers are going to run out of business. I mean, you can even sit in your house, order a taxi. It's not even branded Uber, so you can even sit in the car and everybody thinks it's your car. You're sitting at the back seat. Things are changing. People are not changing towards it. Technology in Ghana sounds like a schooled and uneducated, rhetoric. In Ghana, people are schooled, but few are educated. That is how the rhetoric is in Ghana. Things must change. Thank you.
On convertible notes, can I recite you a poem? Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. And all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. Now, do you know why? Humpty had the wrong king. You went to the wrong lawyer.
Thank you very much. Yes, Kofi.
A quick one. So I'm inspired by what Patrick said. If Bright had said it, I wouldn't have minded him because he drinks petrol in the morning. But what Patrick is saying is that maybe what corporate Ghana needs is a bit more activism. And I'm taking it from what you are saying. You see, the orange bank wanted A, B, C, D. The blue bank was able to use the phone and do this and that and that. Sometimes you find that we have a lot of individual excellence, which sometimes becomes corporate excellence. I have seen companies in Ghana that are as good as the best in the US. They have shiny technology and everything. One of the things you find is that that technology stops at their door. Why? Why? Because you don't have a system that enables us all across. My worry and why the activism thing is important is that we are doing so much and getting so little because we are acting alone. If we had a national ID system, all that bank needs will be a small terminal, and if you put your national ID in, everything will get into their system and you will go home. We have a system, and when I say the system, I mean the government. I don't mean to turn this into a bashing game, so we'll use nicer words. But you see, it's a very, very, very serious thing that our system resists actively innovation. I'm not talking about resistance. Resists actively innovation. We've spent millions of dollars on something which should have happened and has not happened. Not because it can happen, but because some people have insisted it won't happen. Do you know why? Because, like Patrick said, you can't use a goat or anything to bribe a computer. So if you put these things on these computers, then some people can get their way. But what it means is that the rest of us have to pay 10 times more for our daily lives to go on. All right? And I think when we talk about the activism thing, it's not getting on the street all the time. But sometimes it's about taking a bit more time to insist on a few new things. And doing it not alone, but possibly as a group. Because it will lead to changes in your bottom line. It will lead to significant changes in your stress levels. And indeed, you will find out that the pockets of excellence becomes more systemic. I think we all ought to think twice about this thing, because 10 years from now, one of the things Bright said was that we have problems that we had in 10 years ago, which we have now. And it's because we are not getting traction on the systemic level. So think again about this thing so we can all act together and get a better Ghana.
Thank you very much. Any more questions? Okay. In front of you, Rastina. In front of you.
Thank you. My name is Samson Asaki Awingobit. I'm the Executive Secretary to Importers and Exporters Association of Ghana. I do purely advocate on behalf of importers and exporters in the country. What I have seen and learned, and of course what I've heard from our gentlemen, the panelists today, is that a typical Ghanaian, just like the lawyer Ankomah was telling us, how you can even research and guess some of the things that you don't need to go and hire a lawyer. I guess Google something about Ghanaian media. I think it's somewhere 2011 or so. It was sponsored by Rosters Institute fellowship paper by University of Oxford. And chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, a typical managing director who even got on this, come on, I can sit and read all of this. Let's get the lawyer. We have made ourselves cheap and become slaves to the lawyers. In every landscape we find ourselves, it is because we don't read and we don't like anything more than 2 leaflets. That is why you go to even our banking system. They are cheating you. You will not even know that they are cheating. Even a peso, a 0.01 peso is money. But Ghanaians, typically, we don't read. And 2, we don't mentor people to take over leadership after you and I are not there. I'm quite sure in the next 20 years to come, these gentlemen that we have in front of us may not have the strength to also sit here and speak like this. But ask, of course, I know they are young men, but I'm just making it a scenario. But you ask yourself that, are we ready to transfer power and authority, just the other speaker said, to those who are our subordinates in our offices, that in case you are not there, he or she can step into our shoes. We are too much selfish to ourselves. and we don't trust ourselves. And I think that is why the Western countries are moving faster in terms of technology, in terms of everything. Their economic is very resilient, and when it comes to us, because we are not prepared to teach or to give, to mentor our young ones. Indeed, I just want to use this government for example. You open the radio station and they said they have given minister to young people. Who are those the leaders? If they don't take leadership today, when can we be in leadership and can tell that this is our nation, this is how far we want to build the country?
Thank you very much. Are there any more comments? Yes, there's one way at the back. Just go to the back. It would be nice to see how the businesses here relate to some of the trends that were pointed out and some of the comments that were raised.
Thank you. My name is Estelle from MTM Business. Now, as MTM Business, we have a vision of enabling and inspiring growth, especially in ICT. And on some of our outreach programs, especially our business fairs, I was glad to hear about the Innovation Summit. We find a challenge with going regionally. We have roadshows regionally where we find difficulty convincing the businesses to make themselves available to learn about new innovations. So my first question is, how can we improve our cultural attitude in the business sector towards innovation and technology? What kind of tips or suggestions can our panel give for the business sector as a whole, nationally, not just in Accra? How can we improve our fear of change, our fear of technology, and our rate of uptake of these technologies, and appreciate the impact that technology has on improving our businesses? That's my first question. My second one is on education, because MTN Foundation thrives on education and enhancing education in Ghana. How can we improve the education of technology in our public universities? I am personally a publicly trained engineer, but I learned probably 99.99% of what I know on the job. So what are we doing for our graduates or our students who are going into our public universities? How are we educating them there to be ready for the new world of technology and innovation? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take more questions. Taka Awori is in the middle here. Yes, I hope you are noting the questions down. Well, I am.
Hi, my name is Taka Awori. I'm a leadership trainer and consultant. Thanks to all the panelists for their inputs. I think something that I found missing from the conversation is that as you described the future, as much as I could see your vision of a business that was competitive globally in 20 years, I couldn't see the vision of Ghanaian businesses contributing to some of the critical social challenges that Ghana is facing today around inequality, unemployment, a lot of those key issues. So it would be interesting to hear from you, what is it we need to be doing now as business so that in 20 years' time, we're not only competitive globally, but we're also addressing and are a key player in addressing many of the issues that Ghana is facing today. Thank you.
Thank you. And behind you, Henry Sampson, is that the name?
Hi, I'm Henry Sampson from Dream Oval. I largely agree with Bright Simmons on his view of how things are going to change. And one of the things that concerns me, though, is crime. And I don't think it was addressed enough. So with augmented reality, with artificial intelligence, how are we augmenting the reality of crime? How is crime going to change? Are we going to empower crime in certain ways which we've never imagined? Would businesses be at risk in such a manner that we've never ever imagined? How do businesses start preparing for such a future? And another trend which for me is quite concerning as well is with the talk from Kofi about the the superhighway of information, the connectedness, and the fact that Patrick also gave, in terms of education, the number of people we're educating and how the population is growing. In 20 years, would literacy be 100%? If it's not 100%, what would be the consequences of the gap we have and the access to such powerful information online? Because we have the likes of Al-Qaeda and the rest being able to create bombs by watching YouTube videos. And the question would be, given so much information to somebody who may not necessarily be responsible, what kind of future would that create for us, and how do businesses begin to prepare for that? Thank you.
Thank you. I think the panel should address all the questions. So there's a question, two questions from MTN on the technology readiness of Ghanaians and how we can get Ghanaians to be open to use technology, and also education. And there's a question from Taka on the fact that there was a gap in our presentation. She didn't see how we're going to develop business models to solve some of our social problems like unemployment. It was all about how the business would look like and compete globally, but not how the business would help solve society's problems. And then the question on crime. The first three were more contributions. So who's going to take the answers? Maybe Patrick. A couple of questions were on education as well. So.
Okay. All right. I think that some of what has been said maybe was just implied and not direct. So when I said the population of Ghana is going to grow to 40 million people in 20 years, what I was trying to say is that we need to pay attention. What we're doing today in education with a country of about 25 million people is already not sufficient. What we're doing in healthcare is already not sufficient. What we're doing in building infrastructure is already not sufficient, even for today, for our population of 25 million people. And when you look forward 20 years and you think that that population is going to grow by 1.5 times, what this means is there is a tremendous urgency to address the problem. Today, if a kid goes to a public primary school, to answer Henry's question, if a kid goes to a public primary school, there's a very high chance, 90% plus chance, that after 6 years, that kid will be functionally illiterate today. If that trend continues for 20 years, businesses, corporate Ghana, our society, the very fabric of our society is at risk when so many people go through an educational system that does not properly educate them. And that's why I said, when Bernard asked this question, he didn't say, what's one thing people could do? He said, what's the most important thing? And I said, be activist, be proactive. If every business would find a school to engage with, this would make a difference. If every business would make it a point to insist that the professors who are teaching our kids in our universities are keeping up with the times, not using notes from 20 years ago, not being lazy about learning the state of the art today, not being so egotistical that they're suppressing the confidence of the students that they're teaching. If every business would insist on speaking about this and helping our educators, this would make a difference. Now, I liked Bright's comment that it needs to be a collaborative effort. It's very difficult for any one business to move the ground. But if businesses are working together, it can be 10 companies partnering to support a school, or 20 businesses calling for a meeting with the National Accreditation Board, and really being insistent about the deficiencies and the gaps that you see, and making the point about improving our educational system in a forward-looking way and not in a backward-looking way, this would make a difference in the country. So will literacy be 100% in 20 years? I hope so. If it's not, we have a problem. And that's why when I responded to Bernard's question about are we optimists or pessimists, I'm very optimistic for those who will be well educated and who will be creative and who will be connected. But I'm not so optimistic for those who are not educated. I don't see how that population operates in the world of 20 years from now when machines are intelligent.
Just a small point to extend from what Patrick was saying, specifically on the question of 100% literacy 20 years from now. First of all, 20 years from now, the definition of literacy will be different. The intervention of machines, computers, to how human beings engage. Natural language learning and artificial intelligence means if what we define as literacy today can be intervened with artificial intelligence, then what I need to study, know, apply to get something done. And even now we're experiencing it. And Ace made this sort of comment repeatedly saying that if somebody asks him a question, he can Google and get the answer. Well, the other person could have Googled as well. Well, now you can speak in your own local tongue and ask Google a question, and it can search a plethora of databases and construct an appropriate answer. Well, it will get to a point where you may not even have to ask the question, because we're getting to a point where we're building recommendation engines that are serendipitous and are predicting what you need and creating relevance. So one of the things is being able to dial into that future. And maybe it's more about beginning to have leaders who say, well, if we can't simply evolve the current structure of our educational systems working the way they are now, then are there certain interventions that we can do to leapfrog those gaps? And there are a few examples. We all know what prepaid mobile telephony has done for Africa in leapfrogging connectivity. If we had to go through deploying old PSTN landline expensive systems, we would be way behind where we are on the levels of connectivity we have. So again, this is one of the areas in which, on the point of leadership, we need to think ahead and say, how do we leapfrog some of these problems? Rather than defining the problems that we have today in today's terms, we need to understand with what technology can we actually get around them and get to the solutions we actually need.
So a lot of the questions were very challenging. I find myself still thinking about them. And in a lot of cases, I still have a haze in my mind. But Henry was talking about crime and the evolution of crime as technologies get more powerful and as more people have access to technologies. I would look at it more from the point of view of risk, because I think it's not just crime, but it's also risk in its more broader sense. And that means, therefore, that people that don't consider themselves criminals, so we are talking about activists, but you could also have activists that genuinely believe that a particular government agency is corrupt, and therefore they're going to hack into their system and steal their data and make it public. So is Julian Assange, is he a criminal? Assange is the gentleman in Russia, Snowden, is he a criminal? So some of those issues, one of the most important things that I see is that technology itself redefines what society in the past thought were philosophical issues and were static philosophical issues. So one of the amazing examples of that is the way that we now talk about blockchain and decentralized organizations changing the idea of security. So the idea of security in the past was obfuscation. You didn't know what it was. I have my password. You don't know my password. So you can't guess my password. Now blockchain says no. If everybody else knew what was on the ledger, then there's no point stealing anybody's data. And that completely changes the notion of what security means. So I think technology is neutral when it comes to risk and its evolution. It's neutral in the sense that you have bad guys and you have good guys. And you're going to have good guys that you, in your world, you call them white hats, that specialize in fighting evil. You're going to have instances also where things that were scarcity driven, things that were scarcity driven and therefore we did bad things because things were scarce and also abundant. So if I don't have to hack into something because the data is so available, then why hack? So some of those redefinitions in my mind means that we cannot make a very clear prediction whether we will see crime evolve completely beyond our capacity to solve. What I do know though is that the intensity of crime will change. So to give you an example, in another area of risk, which is nuclear proliferation, we saw that in the Second World War, in a single instant, about 145,000 people died. What people argue is that some philosophers say, well, but it stopped us from 5 more years of war. And the burden on our society as a global society of 5 more years of Russia, Germany, and the rest, piling more armaments, what would that mean? 80-20. 20 people are going to be at the very cutting edge. 80% are going to get by. You cannot create a society where 100% of people and 100% of companies are on the cutting edge. I just don't believe that. So what we have to decide is, are we going to become much more definite in selecting champions? Because that's what the Asians have done. If you go to Malaysia, if you go to China and the rest of it, they had a definite policy that we will support champions. So what that means is that, like the Jack Welch theory, if our business is in a particular industry and it cannot be number 1 or number 2, we kill it. Now that kind of almost eugenicist thinking requires ruthlessness. How willing are Ghanaians going to say, look, we can't tolerate mediocrity? We're not going to have a SADA fund or a less debt fund that everybody who shows up and says he's doing baskets should get some money. We're going to concentrate some resources because the likes of Henry are our champions. Are we really willing to make those drastic, bold decisions as a society? I think sometimes as Ghanaians, we are too egalitarian, we are too risk averse, we are, I say, pathologically fair, to the point where some of those very difficult decisions may not be taken for. And that, to my view, is one of the challenges that we face as society.
Well, you are threatening to open a new debate, but I want to end it with Ace Ankomah. So you have the last word, Ace.
Well, I must say the questions indeed were challenging. I agree with Bright. Let me try and address some of them. I have in my wallet my national ID card. It's been in my wallet since I ever got it. I've never had the need to use it in Ghana. Once in the US, I was taking a refund from a shop, and the lady asked for my ID, and I thought I was being naughty, so I gave her my Ghana ID card, and she took that. Is it what was it called? Yeah, the Ghana card, the Ghana ID card, the barcode reader. And my name, my birthday, and my nationality were on her terminal. You see those, the bar, the black line? So why do we stop it? Now, let me drive it home. Do you think we'll be running to the Supreme Court 3-4 times over voting if we are all identified with a national ID card? Will we need a voters register? Will it not be that when you are 18, the computer will tell, every day, computer tells EC, 15 people are 18 today, send them their voter ID cards or voter identification? Will we need to open and close registers? Will we be fighting over who used national health insurance? Can I ask a basic question? Do we want to think? We can fix these things. They are very easy. There are many offices in this country which have biometric entry points. It's your thumbprint. I put my thumb there. It says, welcome to work is Uncle. And I enter my office. So these things exist. But somebody raised the issue about culture. Sometimes it's a cultural thing. And I link it to the issue about why we didn't talk about social issues. I'm sitting here pretending to be brave, but I'm also scared of talking about the social impact of some of the work we are doing, because I'm afraid when I leave here, they'll say, that's what he went and sat there and ran his mouth and bragged. So although I'm trying to break conventions, I'm restrained by them. Are we going to release ourselves from cultural restraints? Let me tell you what you consider a convention today was a new thought years ago. So somebody thought up something and it was accepted and it became a convention. unless and until we are ready, able, prepared to challenge conventions, we are not going anywhere. And so it dovetails into the issue of crime. Of course, the technology is available to criminals. And they are doing very interesting things. They are hacking they hack your system, they hack our system in Ghana, and ask us to pay money somewhere in Eastern Europe for them to release our data. We are sitting in Accra, Ghana. They're somewhere and they hack the entire information and say, we've given you a virus. Come and pay money and let's do it. Now that's at the bigger level. Those of you who click when Yahoo, you get a mail on Yahoo that they are going to close your account. And so share your password. And then you state your password. And the next day, you have no access to your Yahoo account. They have gone into your account. They've changed your password. What they did with one I saw that, they even changed the language to another language. And so people have to sit down and try and reverse it. So crime is moving forward. But who are the agencies that deal with crime? You can be proactive, but the bigger dealing with crime is reactive. You react when the crime has been committed. Now, what is the reaction to technology? Oh, people want to do evil things on election night. Shut down social media. It has to take Kofi Anan. Now, why I say it has to take Kofi Anan is that he's not a young man. But it has to take Kofi Anan, who was my father's classmate in France. They finished Form 5 in 1957. To tell Ghanaians that, oh, this is not a good idea. Don't do it. But we think that the way forward, because, look, there are evil people who would want to cause trouble on election day on all sides of the political divide. Is the answer shutting everything down? We have to think of more innovative ways of dealing with these things. If not, we'll be having this again 20 years from now. And it may be our sons and your sons who will be sitting here and they'll be saying the same things that we are saying. I want to start from the micro level. You and you and you and me. And let's build it together. So we can deal with crime if we are prepared to move forward. But there's a key word. Are we prepared to think? Why did we stop the National ID program? It is good. All of us will be in a database by now. It will help fight crime. We essentially will have a big brother system. Well, libertarians like Bright wouldn't like that. But we'll know where everybody is going. But what happened? We stopped it. Can we fix it? Yes, we can.
Is Ankomah ending our session? A round of applause for the panel. You've been hearing the Innovation Summit brought to you by Citi FM Citi Business Festival with our distinguished panel made up of lawyer Ace Ankomah, technology innovator Bright Simmons, education entrepreneur Patrick Awuah, and technologist and business founder Kofi Dadzie. We've been discussing the future of Ghana business for the next 2 decades, hoping that we wouldn't come back here in 2036 asking the same questions. Our children will be here saying, what did you guys do right to make Ghana a first world country? Let's go and make it happen. I want to say a big thank you to MTN Business for their phenomenal support and SIC Insurance. This program has been live on Citi FM, live on citifmonline.com and Citi Business News Online, as well as live on Facebook. The Citi Business Festival continues in its final week. We'll be focusing on leadership and strategy on air. We have the Exceed Conference for the young ones at the Accra International Conference Center, and we also have the Sales Revolution program on the 30th. My name is Bernard Avle. On behalf of the team that has put this together, the technical team led by Thomas Obindakun and the protocol team led by Ranstina Yankee, I want to say a big thank you to you for being part of this riveting conversation, and please keep listening to 97.3 Citi FM. Good night.